The stars twinkled silently as the consortium ship hovered at the edge of Earth's solar system. Inside, blue-skinned aliens with 4 eyes studied their screens with growing interest. This planet seems primitive, yet their communications suggest rapid advancement, said lead observer Kelm, his outer eyes narrowing. They call it Earth. The galactic consortium had discovered many species, but humans seemed uniquely adaptable. Their digital signals had caught the consortium's attention just decades ago, a mere blink in cosmic time. Now they watched, following their strict non-interference policy with developing worlds. Meanwhile on Earth, Commander Jack Drake stood on the roof of North American Defense Command, watching the night sky with a frown. Reports of strange lights had tripled in the past month. As a 20-year military veteran, he trusted his instincts, and they screamed that something was off. "Sir, you should see this," called Lieutenant Ross, beckoning him inside. On the screen, satellite footage showed an unidentified object moving at impossible speeds before vanishing. "That's the 4th one this week," Drake said, his weathered face tightening. "And no country on Earth has technology that can move like that." Across the galaxy, in the gleaming capital of the Vex Empire, things were moving quickly. Unlike the cautious consortium, the Vex saw other species as resources to be used. Their emperor, a towering figure with metallic skin, reviewed the reports with cold interest. "The planet contains substantial deposits of quantium," reported Science Director Vrin. "More than we found in the last 3 systems combined." "What about the natives?" asked the emperor, his voice like grinding stone. "Primitive. They've barely reached their moon. They would make good workers in the mines." The emperor nodded. "Send a scout ship. Assess their defenses." Back in the consortium observation vessel, alarms suddenly blared. "Unauthorized ship detected," shouted a junior observer. "It's Vex design." Kelm slammed his 3-fingered hand down. "They know the rules. No contact with developing worlds." "They're heading straight for Earth," another observer reported grimly. On Earth, it was a clear night when radar operators at Outpost 17 detected something entering the atmosphere at tremendous speed. Commander Drake was awakened by an urgent call. "Sir, we have an object moving at Mach 8, not responding to any communication." Drake was already pulling on his uniform. "Scramble the jets. I'm on my way." By the time he reached the command center, the situation had escalated. The unidentified craft had halted above the base, hovering silently. "It's just sitting there," whispered Ross. "Like it's watching us." "Are the missiles locked?" Drake asked, eyes fixed on the monitor. "Yes, sir, but we don't know what we're dealing with." Drake took a deep breath. "If it makes any aggressive move, fire." In the Vex scout ship, the pilots scanned the primitive base below. "Their weapons are laughably simple," one commented. "They use chemical propellants and basic metals." "The Emperor will be pleased," replied the commander. "Begin scanning for the quantium deposits." As they activated their deeper scanning equipment, the energy signature spiked dramatically. At Outpost 17, alarms blared. "Sir, energy buildup detected. It looks like they're charging some kind of weapon," shouted a technician. Drake didn't hesitate. "Fire." 3 surface-to-air missiles launched in quick succession. The Vex scouts, unprepared for any resistance from such a primitive species, had neglected to activate their shields. The first missile missed. The second exploded near the ship, damaging its propulsion system. The third hit directly. The night sky lit up as the alien craft spiraled downward, crashing into the desert 5 miles from the base. Within an hour, the crash site was surrounded by military vehicles. Drake stood at the edge of the smoking crater, looking at the twisted metal with a mixture of awe and dread. "Sir," said Ross quietly beside him, "I think we just made first contact." Drake nodded grimly. "And something tells me they didn't come in peace." Across the void of space, the consortium observers watched in alarm, while in the Vex Empire, the Emperor received news of the lost scout ship with cold rage. The war for Earth was about to begin. 6 months after the scout ship incident, Earth had changed. Military forces worldwide stood on high alert. Governments shared intelligence freely, and civilians practiced emergency drills. Everyone knew something was coming. Admiral Helen Wilson paced the floor of the United Earth Defense Command Center, a facility hastily built beneath the Rocky Mountains. The gray-haired veteran had been chosen to lead humanity's combined military forces, a job she never wanted. Satellite feed from Station 7 called out a technician. Wilson turned to the main screen. What she saw made her blood run cold. Hundreds of massive ships had appeared at the edge of the solar system. They weren't hiding anymore. "Send the alert." "This is not a drill," she ordered, her voice steady, despite the fear tightening her chest. "It's happening." Across Earth, sirens wailed as civilians rushed to shelters. Fighter pilots scrambled to their aircraft. Missile operators took their stations. In orbit around Jupiter, the Vex invasion fleet assembled. General Kor, a decorated Vex commander, addressed his troops through the fleet's communication system. "The primitives have been warned of our coming," he said, his voice cold and metallic. "They had the chance to surrender after we lost contact with our scout ship. Their resistance is futile but expected. Show no mercy." The consortium representatives had tried one last time to stop the invasion. Their ambassador had pleaded with the Vex Emperor. "These humans are under our observation. They deserve time to develop naturally," the ambassador had argued. The Emperor had simply laughed. "They attacked our scout ship. They've chosen war. Besides, their planet is too rich in resources to ignore." Now, as the first wave of Vex ships entered Earth's atmosphere, the consortium could only watch in dismay. The initial attacks targeted major cities: New York, Beijing, London, Moscow. Vex ships fired energy weapons that turned skyscrapers to dust. Smaller craft deployed troops, 8-foot-tall armored soldiers with weapons that fired plasma bolts. In London, the first surprise came. As Vex troops marched down Oxford Street, they were met not with surrender but with a barrage of missiles from hidden bunkers. The explosions caught them off guard, destroying a dozen soldiers. General Kor watched the feeds with surprise. "They're more organized than expected," increased the bombardment. But similar scenes played out worldwide. Humans had prepared. Underground bunkers housed missile launchers. Civilian volunteers had trained for months. Every city had evacuation tunnels leading to mountain strongholds. At Defense Command, Admiral Wilson received reports from around the globe. Seoul reports 40% losses, but holding major infrastructure, reported a communications officer. New Delhi has evacuated 90% of civilians to the mountain facilities. Rome has fallen. Wilson nodded grimly. "And our special project?" Dr. James Miller, a physicist who had studied the crashed scout ship, stepped forward. "We've identified weaknesses in their armor. The joints are vulnerable to high-temperature projectiles. We're modifying ammunition now. Get it to the front lines immediately," Wilson ordered. In New York, Captain Tom Foster led a desperate defense of the harbor. His soldiers were exhausted, outgunned, but not outsmarted. They had noticed the Vex always attacked in the same formation: heavy units in front, support units behind. "Wait for my signal," Foster told his team through the radio as Vex troops marched down Broadway. "Remember the pattern." When the Vex reached Times Square, Foster gave the order. Explosive charges hidden in the buildings detonated, collapsing structures precisely onto the support units. In the chaos, snipers targeted the joints in the aliens' armor, the weak points Dr. Miller had identified. For the first time, a Vex unit retreated in disarray. Similar tactics worked in other cities. Humans couldn't match Vex firepower, but they adapted quickly, finding weaknesses, changing tactics, striking where least expected. In his command ship, General Kor received troubling reports. "These humans," he muttered, watching footage of a successful ambush in Cairo. "They don't fight like other species." His aide nodded nervously. "Should we request more troops, General?" Kor's 4 eyes narrowed. "Yes, and tell the Emperor these primitives will require more attention than we anticipated. On Earth, despite heavy losses, hope grew. Humanity would not fall easily. 1 year into the war, Earth was almost unrecognizable. Cities lay in ruins, but humanity endured. In hidden facilities around the world, scientists worked day and night studying captured Vex technology. The aliens had expected quick surrender. Instead, they found themselves fighting an increasingly sophisticated enemy. Dr. Miller hunched over a dissected Vex weapon in his underground laboratory. Dark circles under his eyes showed his exhaustion, but excitement burned in his gaze. "Look at this," he said to Admiral Wilson, who had come to check on his progress. "Their shield technology relies on a frequency that blocks physical objects, but it has a weakness." He demonstrated by firing the modified weapon at a captured Vex shield. The energy pulse passed straight through, disabling the generator behind it. "We found the gap in their armor," Miller said, grinning despite his fatigue. "If we adjust our weapons to this frequency, we can penetrate their shields." Wilson placed a hand on his shoulder. "How quickly can we modify our arsenal?" 2 weeks for the first batch. Then we can mass produce." Outside the laboratory, the war raged on. Major Lisa Reed led the largest resistance network in North America, coordinating attacks across the continent from a hidden command center in the Appalachian Mountains. "Status report," she demanded, studying the holographic map showing Vex positions. "Team Alpha successfully destroyed the supply depot in Sector 7, reported her communications officer. Team Bravo is trapped behind enemy lines, but still operational." Reed nodded, her face grim beneath a scar that ran from temple to chin. "Tell Bravo to lie low. We strike the communications tower at dawn." Across the world, similar resistance groups fought with increasing effectiveness. Humans learned to jam Vex communications, to predict their patrol patterns, to strike where they least expected. In space, the consortium observers watched with growing amazement. "They've advanced their technology by approximately 200 years in just 12 months, said Kelm, reviewing the data. "It's unprecedented." "The Vex made a terrible mistake," replied his colleague. "They awakened a species with remarkable adaptability." The Vex Empire was beginning to realize this too. General Kor stood before the Emperor, his posture stiff with tension. "The humans have modified their weapons. They've learned to penetrate our shields. We've lost 3 battalions this week alone." The Emperor's metallic face showed no emotion, but his voice carried rage. "These are primitives. How is this possible?" "They learn quickly," Kor admitted, "and they fight differently. They don't follow conventional tactics. They adapt." "Then send more forces," the Emperor commanded. "Crush them completely." Kor hesitated. "With respect, Emperor, I believe we should reconsider. These humans." "Are you questioning my orders, General?" Kor bowed his head. "No, Emperor. I will dispatch the reinforcements immediately." Back on Earth, humanity's first major victory came unexpectedly. Captain Foster, now leading an elite strike team, had discovered the location of a Vex communications hub in what was once Buenos Aires. "This is our chance," he told his team as they prepared for the mission. "If we capture this facility intact, we'll have access to their entire tactical network." The operation was dangerous, with only a 30% chance of success according to military analysts. Foster's team of 20 soldiers moved through the ruins at night, using modified Vex technology to mask their heat signatures. When they reached the facility, they used Dr. Miller's frequency disruptors to penetrate the shields. The Vex guards never expected an attack so bold. Within 15 minutes, the hub was secured. "Command, this is Foster," he radioed. "Package secured. Requesting technical team for immediate extraction of data." Within hours, human forces had access to Vex battle plans, communication protocols, and tactical deployments. For the first time, they could anticipate the enemy's moves. In his flagship, General Kor received the news with disbelief. How could a communications hub fall? It was guarded by elite units. His aide trembled. The humans. They used our own technology against us. Kor smashed his fist against the control panel. The Emperor needs to understand. These are not just clever animals. These humans, they're dangerous. But the Vex Emperor, in his arrogance, refused to see the truth. He ordered more troops, more ships, more devastation. He didn't realize that every defeat only made humanity stronger. 18 months into the war, humanity achieved what many had considered impossible. In a hidden facility beneath the Swiss Alps, Dr. Miller stood before Admiral Wilson and the Joint Chiefs of the United Earth Defense Force. "We've done it," he announced, his tired face lighting up with pride. "We've successfully reverse-engineered the Vex FTL drive." The room fell silent. Faster-than-light travel had been the one advantage the aliens had maintained. Humans could fight on Earth, but the Vex controlled space. "Are you certain it works?" Admiral Wilson asked, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Miller nodded. "We've run 3 successful tests. The 4th test transported a monkey to Mars and back. The animal returned completely healthy." Wilson turned to the gathered military leaders. "Ladies and gentlemen, we can now take this fight to the enemy." Across the galaxy, the consortium had called an emergency session. Representatives from 37 species gathered in their Great Hall, watching footage of human advancements. They've mastered technologies in months that took other species centuries. Kelm explained to the assembly. "They've modified Vex weapons to be more effective than the originals. We should intervene," suggested one delegate, a tall, insect-like being. "The Vex have violated our non-interference protocols." "To what end?" countered another. "The humans will lose eventually. The Vex Empire spans 12 systems." Kelm shook his head. "I'm not so certain anymore. These humans, they're unlike any species we've encountered." Meanwhile, General Kor stood on the bridge of his command ship, watching the holographic display of Earth with growing concern. Supply ships weren't reaching the ground forces. Human resistance fighters had become experts at disrupting Vex operations. "Another transport destroyed," reported his second-in-command. "That's the 5th this week." Kor slammed his fist down. "How?" "Our ships are protected by our most advanced shields. The humans have developed weapons that bypass them, General, and our intelligence suggests they're planning something bigger." Kor had begun to respect these humans, even as he fought them. They weren't just clever, they were relentless. The Emperor needed to understand the true nature of this war before it was too late. On Earth, Admiral Wilson launched Operation Counterweight, humanity's first coordinated global offensive. Using the captured communications hub, they'd identified key Vex supply depots in orbit. Now, with their newly developed FTL capabilities, they could strike. "All vessels report ready, Admiral," announced Captain Foster from the bridge of the Defiance. Earth's first FTL-capable warship, built from modified Vex technology. Wilson nodded solemnly. "You all know what's at stake. For 18 months, we've been on the defensive. Today, that changes. Today, we show the Vex that humanity will not be conquered." 10 ships, each carrying modified weapons designed by Dr. Miller's team, jumped to positions surrounding the Vex supply fleet. The alien vessels, caught completely by surprise, had no time to raise shields before the first wave of attacks hit. From his command ship, General Kor watched in horror as human vessels appeared from nowhere, destroying 3 supply ships in rapid succession. "Impossible," he shouted. "They can't have FTL technology already." But the evidence was clear on the monitors. Human ships were jumping in and out of FTL, striking Vex vessels from multiple angles, then disappearing before counterattacks could land. "General," his aide said quietly, "the Emperor is demanding a status report." Kor's 4 eyes narrowed. "Tell him the truth. Tell him we've severely underestimated these humans." The battle lasted just 47 minutes. When it ended, the Vex had lost 12 supply ships and a battlecruiser. The human fleet suffered damage but no losses. The real prize came 3 days later. A daring raid led by Captain Foster captured an intact Vex battleship, the Relentless. Engineers and scientists swarmed over the vessel, extracting every bit of technology and information. As Wilson inspected the captured ship, Foster approached with a datapad. "Admiral, you need to see this," he said urgently. "We've accessed their star charts." Wilson looked at the display and her eyes widened. There, clearly marked, was the location of the Vex homeworld. "For the first time since the war began," she smiled. The captured Vex battleship Relentless hung in Earth's orbit, its sleek metallic hull reflecting the sun's light. Inside, Commander Drake walked through the alien corridors that human engineers had worked tirelessly to understand. 2 years ago, he had been at Outpost 17 when the first Vex scout ship crashed. Now, he would lead humanity's first mission beyond the solar system. "Final systems check complete," Commander reported Lieutenant Ross, who had stayed by Drake's side through the entire war. "All modifications are operational." Drake nodded, his face solemn. "And the crew?" "All aboard. 50 soldiers, 20 engineers, and Dr. Miller's science team." The mission was simple but dangerous. Strike the Vex staging base in the Proxima Centauri system. Intelligence gathered from the captured ship revealed that the Vex were assembling a massive fleet there, one that could overwhelm Earth's defenses. Drake made his way to the bridge, now retrofitted with human control systems alongside the alien technology. The crew stood at attention as he entered. "At ease," he said, taking the commander's chair. "Today we take the fight to them. Today we show the Vex that attacking Earth was their greatest mistake." The journey to Proxima Centauri using the Vex FTL drive would take only 6 hours, a distance that would have taken human spacecraft thousands of years to cross using pre-war technology. As the Relentless prepared to depart, Admiral Wilson's voice came through the communication system. "Commander Drake, you carry the hopes of humanity with you. Good hunting. We won't let you down." "Admiral," Drake replied, then nodded to his pilot. "Engage FTL." The stars blurred as the ship jumped beyond the speed of light. In the Consortium Observation Center, alarms sounded as sensors detected the human-controlled Vex ship leaving Earth's system. "They're going beyond their solar system," Kelm announced, his voice filled with disbelief. "In a Vex warship." His superior, a senior Consortium official, watched the trajectory data with growing concern. "They're heading directly toward a major Vex staging area. This is unprecedented." Another observer spoke up hesitantly. "Sir, I've been analyzing human communications. Several Consortium species have been secretly contacting Earth leaders." "What?" Kelm turned sharply. "That violates our non-interference protocols. They believe the Vex must be stopped," the observer explained. "And these humans might be capable of doing it." Meanwhile, on a world far from Earth, the Vex Emperor received disturbing news. His aide trembled as he delivered the report. "Great Emperor, our staging base at Proxima Centauri reports that one of our battleships is approaching." "One of ours? What's unusual about that?" the Emperor demanded. It's the Relentless, Emperor, the ship we lost to the humans." The Emperor's metallic face couldn't show emotion, but his voice became dangerously quiet. "The humans have left their system." Back aboard the Relentless, Drake and his crew emerged from FTL at the edge of the Proxima Centauri system. Before them lay an imposing sight, hundreds of Vex ships in formation around a massive space station. "They haven't detected us yet," reported the sensor officer. "Our modified cloaking technology is working." Drake studied the tactical display. "Begin approach. Prepare the weapon." Dr. Miller had developed a special payload for this mission, a virus that could disable Vex systems based on weaknesses found in their computer architecture. The Relentless silently approached the heart of the Vex fleet. When they were in position, Drake gave the order. "Deploy the virus." The weapon launched, a small projectile that attached to the central command station. For several tense minutes, nothing happened. Then suddenly, lights across the Vex fleet began to flicker and die. "It's working," exclaimed Dr. Miller from his station. "Their systems are shutting down." Drake didn't hesitate. "All weapons, fire." The Relentless unleashed its arsenal, striking the helpless Vex ships. Within minutes, chaos engulfed the staging area as vessels collided, unable to maneuver. Back on Earth, Admiral Wilson received the transmission with growing hope. The mission was a success. For the first time, humanity had struck a decisive blow against the Vex beyond their own solar system. But even as humanity celebrated, Dr. Miller approached Wilson with a concerned expression. "Admiral, we've detected unusual energy readings at the edge of our system." Wilson's joy faded. "Vex reinforcements." Miller shook his head. "No, it's different. I think someone else is watching us now." The consortium had made its decision. Humanity would not fight alone anymore. Light flashed across the night sky as strange ships appeared in Earth's orbit. Unlike the angular, menacing vessels of the Vex, these craft were smooth and elegant. At first, defense systems worldwide went on high alert, until the ships broadcasted their message on all frequencies. "People of Earth, we are representatives of the Galactic Consortium. We come in peace and offer our alliance against the Vex Empire." In the United Earth Defense Command Center, Admiral Wilson stared at the main screen, watching the alien delegation descend in a shuttle. After years of fighting alone, the idea of allies seemed almost too good to be true. "Are we sure this isn't a Vex trick?" she asked Dr. Miller, who stood beside her. Miller shook his head. "Their technology signatures are completely different, and our intelligence never found any mention of these species in Vex databases." The delegation landed at the designated meeting point, a rebuilt section of Geneva. 5 different alien species emerged from the shuttle. Leading them was Kelm, his blue skin and 4 eyes marking him as different from any being humans had encountered before. "Admiral Wilson," Kelm said, bowing slightly, "we have observed your struggle against the Vex with growing admiration. Several member species of our consortium have chosen to break with our non-interference policy to stand with humanity." Wilson's face remained cautious. "Why now? We've been fighting for over 2 years." "Because you've done the impossible," replied Kelm. "No species has ever pushed back the Vex. Many of us have lost worlds to their expansion. We believed resistance was futile until we saw humans." The alliance formed quickly. The consortium species brought advanced medical technology that helped heal Earth's wounded. Their ships joined Earth's growing fleet. Most importantly, they shared weapons technology far beyond what humans had developed. In a rebuilt London, Major Reed met with alien tactical officers to coordinate resistance efforts across 12 worlds currently under Vex occupation. "Your guerrilla tactics are brilliant," said a reptilian alien named Traz. "We've never considered such approaches." Reed smiled grimly. "When you're outgunned, you get creative. Now, with your star maps, we can strike deep into Vex territory." Aboard the command carrier Hope, Earth's first completely human-built starship, Captain Foster briefed his multi-species crew on their mission. "Intelligence from our new allies indicates the Vex are building planet-killer weapons," he explained, pointing to the holographic display. "They plan to make an example of Earth." A collective murmur of concern spread through the crew compartment. "Our mission is to infiltrate the manufacturing facility and sabotage these weapons before they're deployed." In the Vex throne room, the Emperor raged at his generals. Reports from across the Empire showed a sudden change in the war. Human tactics combined with consortium technology had created a devastating new threat. "How could you allow this alliance to form?" he roared at General Kor. Kor stood his ground. "I warned that the humans were dangerous. I advised caution. Now they've inspired rebellion across our territories. Then deploy the planet killers." The Emperor commanded. "Destroy their homeworld and end this." Deep in Vex space, Foster's mission encountered heavy resistance. The manufacturing facility was heavily guarded, with defenses they hadn't anticipated. "We can't breach their outer shields," reported the weapons officer as the Hope shuddered under enemy fire. Foster studied the tactical display, looking for a weakness. "There," he said, pointing to a small opening in the shield pattern. "It's only open for seconds when they rotate shield frequencies." "That's not enough time to get a torpedo through," argued his second-in-command. Foster's expression hardened. "It's enough time for a fighter." Minutes later, Foster piloted a small craft toward the gap, carrying a payload of explosives. The timing had to be perfect. As the shields began their rotation, he pushed the engines to maximum. "Shield gap in 3, 2, 1. He shot through the opening with barely inches to spare. Alarms blared as defensive weapons locked onto his fighter. Dodging and weaving, he approached the facility's power core. "This is for Earth," he whispered, releasing the payload before banking hard away from the target. The explosion rippled through the facility, setting off secondary detonations. Foster fought to control his damaged fighter as he raced back toward the shield gap. Back on Earth, Admiral Wilson received Foster's transmission with relief. The planet killer weapons had been destroyed before completion. As she shared the news with Kelm and the other alien representatives, a junior officer rushed in. "Admiral, we've decoded Vex battle plans from their central network." Wilson took the data pad, her eyes widening as she read. "They're gathering their remaining forces for a final assault on their homeworld. They expect us to attack there." Kelm leaned forward. "And will you?" Wilson smiled for the first time in days. "They've finally learned to predict us, so we'll do exactly what they don't expect." "Which is?" asked Kelm. "We'll attack their homeworld, but not how they think. Commander Drake is already en route with a plan that they'll never see coming." The final battle for the fate of Earth and the galaxy was about to begin. The Vex homeworld loomed large on the view screen, a planet of gleaming metal cities and artificial landscapes. Commander Drake stood on the bridge of the flagship Justice, leading the largest fleet ever assembled in the galaxy's history. 200 Earth vessels flew alongside ships from 7 consortium species. "All ships report ready for combat," Lieutenant Ross announced. Drake nodded, his face solemn. After 3 years of brutal war, this was the moment that would decide everything. The Vex had expected this attack. Their defenses were fully deployed, thousands of warships arranged in formation to protect their homeworld. "Begin Operation Phoenix," Drake ordered. But instead of charging forward as the Vex expected, the Allied fleet split into 12 smaller groups and jumped to different positions around the system. The Vex Emperor watched from his palace with confusion. "What are they doing?" he demanded of General Kor, who had been recalled to command the home defense. "I don't know," Kor admitted. "This isn't standard human tactics." Suddenly, alarms blared across the Vex command center. "Multiple breaches detected in planetary defense grid," shouted an officer. "Ground forces report systems failing across all sectors." The Emperor turned to Kor in rage. "What is happening?" On the outskirts of the capital city, Dr. Miller monitored the progress of his greatest creation. For 6 months, he had worked with consortium scientists to develop a technological virus unlike any weapon before. Small, stealthy drones had infiltrated the planet weeks earlier, planting the virus throughout the Vex systems. Activation at 87%. Miller reported through his secure channel to Drake. "Their weapon systems are shutting down. Communications failing." Admiral Wilson's voice came through the command channel. "Phase 2, commence." From the divided fleet groups, smaller ships detached and accelerated toward the planet's surface. On board were elite troops led by Major Reed, ready to secure key facilities on the ground. "Remember the plan," Reed told her soldiers as their drop ship plunged through the atmosphere. "Minimal casualties. We're here to end the war, not extend it." The Vex Emperor watched in horror as his ships hung powerless in space, their weapons and engines disabled by Miller's virus. On the surface, his troops found their advanced armor suits locked and immobile. How is this possible? He raged as the palace defenses shut down around him. We are the most advanced species in the galaxy. General Kor, watching the systematic dismantling of the Empire's forces, finally spoke the truth. No, Emperor, we were just the most arrogant. Drake coordinated the fleet's movements as they surrounded the planet, ensuring no reinforcements could arrive from distant Vex colonies. Captain Foster, who had recovered from his injuries in the Planet Killer mission, led the team securing the orbital defense stations. All orbital platforms secured, Commander, Foster reported. No casualties on either side. This had been a key part of the plan. To win without unnecessary bloodshed, to show that humans fought for survival, not vengeance. In the capital city, Major Reed and her forces reached the palace. The once mighty emperor stood surrounded by his guards, but their weapons were useless. Surrender, Reed demanded simply. Your war is over. For a moment, it seemed the emperor might refuse. Then General Kor stepped forward, removing his ceremonial armor. The general is right, Kor said. We underestimated you from the beginning. We saw a primitive species and thought you would be easy to conquer. We were wrong. The emperor, seeing his empire crumbling around him, finally bowed his head in defeat. Across the galaxy, worlds under Vex occupation received the news with celebration. The Consortium Grand Council convened an emergency session to recognize the new reality of galactic politics. 1 month later, representatives from Earth, the Consortium, and the former Vex Empire gathered to sign the Galactic Accord. Admiral Wilson, Commander Drake, Dr. Miller, Captain Foster, and Major Reeb stood as humanity's delegation. Kelm approached them before the ceremony. When we first discovered your world, we thought you were just another developing species. We never imagined you would reshape the galaxy. Wilson smiled. We never wanted to. We just wanted to survive. And instead, you liberated a dozen worlds and ended an empire that has terrorized the galaxy for centuries. Kelm replied with respect. As the treaty was signed, Drake looked out at the assembled species and felt the weight of the moment. Humanity had gone from fighting for survival to leading a new galactic order in just 3 years. What happens now? Ross asked quietly beside him. Drake watched as former enemies shook hands, as new alliances formed, as the future began to take shape. Now, he said, we build something better together. The stars had never seemed brighter, or the universe more full of promise. The empire that had underestimated humanity was gone. In its place, a new age was beginning, one of cooperation, strength, and hope.